two patients
A medical
there.
facility, yes.
It's a medical facility, the Center for Discovery in Monticello. Well, anyway, she had a couple of patients there that came from that particular location that this book is about, and they got surgical scars on them without any record of why they're there.
Unbelievable. I mean, it's not unbelievable, but that's sad.
So, I mean, it's all fucked up, but, you know, so there's that story there. I mean, it's not as sexual as my first one. I'm not going to lie. So, I mean, if you're looking for, you know, someone getting stuck with some, you know, member or whatever the case may be, you're not going to find it in there.
Right. So what was the hardest part of writing this particular book, do you think?
The hardest part of writing it, in all honesty, this particular book, was trying to separate my own emotions from getting this particular story out to, you know, the business side of me of, I got to write this book, I got to get it done. And I think that was the hardest part.
Right. Interesting. All right, well, more on that later. I think we should talk to Joni.
we have to. Joni's the guest.
She is the guest. I'll interview you at a later time. This gives me more to think about until our next interview. So, talking about Joni's latest book, Joni, do you normally like to sort of put an underlying message in your novels that you sort of want readers to grasp that maybe, you know, isn't necessarily on the surface?
Yeah,
I love that.
I like to. Well, I do. This book is a little different because it talks about how I moved into a haunted house as a sensitive, but I was really repressing my abilities at that point, and the entity that was at this house caused him to come to the front, and he wouldn't let me ignore the fact that I could feel him. And the more I ignored him, the more he amped up the activity. And, you know, anybody that lives in a haunted house can probably tell you it's not a lot like it is on TV. You know, you see shows like Paranormal Witness, and they have, you know, furniture flying and knives being thrown across the room, and it's not usually like that. A true haunting is more, it's more subtle, and it's more timed. They wait until you get comfortable again, and then they jump out at you, or they do something to frighten you. So it's constantly living on in fear of what's going to happen next. And as a sensitive, I knew he was there. You know, little things would happen. And, you know, my underlying message was he really tore apart my marriage. He would get between us. You know, ghosts can affect people's moods. And
sexually, right? He didn't get in between sexually, right?
Yeah, well, they can implant thoughts, you know, and emotions, and, you know, he would get between us and really cause some massive fights. And, you know, in the very beginning, which is typical with a lot of hauntings, he would only present himself to me because he knew that my now ex-husband wouldn't believe me on a lot of it. And he didn't. Sure. And so that drove another wedge. You know, I was having all these things happen to me, and he was not experiencing it, you know, so he kind of, you know, poo-pooed me like, you know, oh, yeah, you're just losing your mind. And I had a new baby. I was pregnant when I moved in, and I had a brand new baby. And, you know, she would wake up screaming in the middle of the night. And, you know, it could have been colic, like they said, but they couldn't find anything wrong with her. She just would wake up, and she'd be staring across the room. So, you know, I have to wonder, you know, what she was seeing. And it just started getting worse and worse. And it got to a point, we were there for 11 years, and when we finally decided to sell and get out of there, I was so excited because it stresses you, you know, really wears you down and ages you quickly, living with that constantly.
Why do you think you stayed there that long? I mean, that's a long time. I've lived in haunted places, and I never stayed that long, but that's a long time, Joni.
Well, we were kind of forced to, because when we bought the house, it was at the top height of the market. So and then the market bottomed out right after that. So, you know, we started doing renovations on the house, which anybody knows paranormal situations knows that often amps up the activity, which it did. And, you know, so we were under construction for a long time because we were trying to do it all ourselves. And, So by the time we decided to sell, the market had come back up, so we were able to at least get our money back out of the house. So that really money kind of dictated how long we stayed there, unfortunately.
Now, what type of activity was happening in the house that you wrote about in your book? I know I've heard you mention some of it before, but for our listeners who don't know anything about it, I know there was some pretty intensive activity that took place there.
Well, it started off softly and slowly with footsteps and items disappearing and reappearing somewhere else. And then it escalated up to people actually seeing dark shadows moving across the room. And and it got to the point he wrote on a wall, which to me is really chilling, because it takes a lot of energy and a lot of effort to do that. And the message he left me was pretty chilling too. He said, "I'm here, woman," written in chalk next to a fish tank that I maintained. So inside of a closet, it was centered perfectly between two studs on the back of the sheetrock, and it was written in chalk. And we didn't have any chalk in the house, and we were the only two there. My daughter was just a baby; she couldn't even walk, nevertheless write. So,
right.
And it just kept getting worse and worse. We'd hear doors open and close, and somebody walk across the floor. You'd hear toilets flush, and I started having severe nightmares, which I've always been prone to nightmares and sleepwalking, but people couldn't wake me up. I'd go running, screaming through the house, and I was having the same dreams that I had when I was a child and was living in my father's house that was also haunted. So it was kind of linking the two. I think he had a way of getting in your head and knowing what scares you. And for me, just the thought that he could read my thoughts terrified me. And it just kept going until, it finally got quiet a little bit. I think the entity that lived there or with us finally kind of got used to us. And I did find out history on who it was, so I can track back the haunting to a real life person. But as soon as we moved out, the house was sold 5 times in 5 years.
Oh, wow. Oh, I'm not surprised with that type of activity. And what kind of research were you able to do on the house?
Well, I was able to, a couple of things. One, when I was living there, somebody that lived down the road from us stopped by one day and was talking about the people that had lived there before the people that we bought it from. And the man, his name was Bob, had died in the house. And his wife stayed there until they finally drug her off because she kind of lost it. She was flinging food against the walls and just all kinds of crazy stuff. But I was able to research later the precise names by a couple of different methods. I was able to look at the listing for the ownership, the property records, and then I also did a whodieDinMyHouse.com. I don't know if you're familiar with that site, but you can find out if anybody died in your house. And it pulled up his name again, so I had validation.
Excellent. Where is everyone?
No, that is interesting. So do you find when you're writing your books, are some things harder for you to write about than others? Are certain types of things hard for you or difficult for you to write about?
Well, this last book was really difficult for me to write because I had to go back into a history that I had closed the door on and wasn't trying not to think about anymore. And so that was very difficult, having to go back through all my old journals and, pull all the information. So typically I don't really have a problem. Everybody, a lot of other writers have writer's block, and I never have that issue. I just,
That's great.
I move on to something else. Yeah, the words kind of come to me. Sometimes I swear I'm channeling somebody when I write because the words
you never
go through me. Yeah. That's great.
What do you think, out of all your books, and I know they're all wonderful, amazing books, which one are you more proud of?
I love my very first book, Lightning Strikes, post-apocalyptic fiction, set in a time when the world was not in chaos. Terrorists released a virus and it killed off 90% of the population, and a 16-year-old girl and her sister are hunkered down living in their family's home. So that one is my favorite. As far as paranormal books go, it would be like trying to tell you which one of my children I like the best. I love them all. I think Bones in the Basement probably got the most publicity because it was about a famous house, and a lot of people were intrigued by, the story that wasn't told. It was pieces of it were told here and there in different TV shows, but nobody really pulled it together and got the whole story. So that one probably was the most work for me because it involved a lot of interviews. I interviewed probably 24 different people for the book.
Wow.
And pulled their stories into it, yeah. And I wrote it novel style, so it's suspenseful. I take you through the book as it happens to them. So I know the owners, when they read it, Edwin was telling me, he said, I'm reading this and I'm forgetting it's me as I'm reading it. And he goes, I want to read more to find out what's going to happen next. And I go, wait a minute, I know what happened next. So, yeah, so all my books are suspenseful. I make sure that happens in them. So a lot of people hate me because I keep them up late.
No, like with your fictional book, like with your fictional stories, do you ever find yourself feeling like maybe you kind of are one of those characters that you're writing about?
I'm certain there's a lot of me in my characters. Yeah, I mean,
I would think.
It's hard not to do that, to pull yourself in. I think there's more of me in my first trilogy. I have another fiction series called Winter Woods, and it's also young adult, but it has more paranormal aspects to it. And I'm not nearly like that character. I think she's a bit more angrier than I am. But it wasn't hard to tap into that teenage angst, that we all feel at that age, and put it on paper. But
sure,
I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Now, are you working on anything now presently, as far as writing?
I am. I'm writing a book for Michael Robichaud about his experiences, and he's so amazing. I didn't even know people like him existed, but I've had a problem with ghosts following me home forever. Ever since I started investigating, which I documented in Soul Collector, I picked up a really nasty entity that I had no one to help me get him off of me or out of my house, and so I had to live with that horrible haunting for several months. And then I came across Michael. I met him at the Victorian, which I've met a lot of my friends at the Victorian, and he lives in Virginia, but we kept in touch after he went back home. And I was having an especially bad attachment again. It seemed like every time I left the house, I didn't even have to investigate. I just had to go to the grocery store sometimes, and something would follow me home. And he said, "Well, I'll send my spirit guides in tonight and take care of it." And I thought, okay, this is weird, because unless you've experienced this, it just sounds weird that somebody's going to send their invisible people in to rescue you. But that night at about 11 o'clock, I'd forgotten about it. And I heard this, I'm clairaudient, so I hear a sound when a ghost is present. And usually it's similar to ear ringing, except for I can track it. I can tell you where it is in the room. And if it moves further away, it gets softer. If it gets closer, it gets louder. And about 11 o'clock, I heard something come into the room that was so loud, it was like laser lights zipping around my room. And my cats were, like they're watching a tennis match. They were staring at me.
Yeah.
The places where I was hearing the noise were where they were staring. And this went on for a couple of hours. And I finally managed to fall asleep. And the next morning I woke up and the ghost that had followed me home was gone. It was completely silent, which for somebody who's clairaudient, silence is golden because the ear ringing gets maddening after a while. And so I had no ghost in my house. And he's since helped me and many other people. As I've been interviewing the people that he helped, it's just been astounding to me what he's done. I mean, there was one girl that had a possession, and he was able to help her I had him help somebody recently. I teach a Paranormal 101 class locally, and one of my students came in with a really bad haunting, and he's had groups in trying to help him, and nobody's been able to